Thank you for listening to the Damage Report podcast, the show covering the true threats facing our country and what you can actually do about them. You can support this free podcast by leaving us a review and giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you happen to be listening to it. Every review helps more people discover the show at no cost to you. Welcome everyone to another week of the Damage Report. Hold on to your butts. We're in the FBI investigation now. Such as it is. I don't know if I said that I'm John Idarola, but I am still John Idarola. Joined, as always, on Mondays by Brooke Thomas.
Hello.
As long as we can have you.
I know.
Anyway.
I know. I'm here. I'm glad to be here.
And we have got a lot that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be starting off with all of the updates, or at least most of the updates on Kavanaugh. We could do, as we did last week, a whole week of, a whole show on it. But there's a lot of other stuff that we have to get to. We're going to be joined once again, I think the third time on the show, by Laurie Penny in our second block. We're going to be talking about her controversial essay on why she refuses to debate fascists that I loved. I wanted to screenshot and post to Instagram every section of her essay. So we're going to have her on, and then updates on one of the worst natural disasters of recent memory, the tsunami. Absolutely devastating death toll. We're going to be talking about that. And then there's lots more to get to. Later on in the show, I want to profile one of, I think, perhaps the most offensive political ads ever made in America. And we have like a distinguished history in America.
Right, the bar is high, too,
yes.
So that's interesting.
But just for deceit and racism, we've got an amazing one that we're going to profile. And then we're going to be closing out the show. We're going to be joined by Strom of TYT Sports. SNL happened yesterday. We don't normally talk about SNL.
2 days ago.
2 days ago, yes, that's true. Yes, I guess traditionally it happens on Saturdays. That's true. Most of the time.
It's in the name.
Most.
So
sometimes they're a little bit late. But anyway, not only did SNL happen, but Kanye West happened.
Yes.
Sorry, Ye West?
Yay.
Ye old
Kanye.
West?
Yay. John,
okay.
Stop.
Hey, just because somebody decides to change their name doesn't mean that I have to immediately go along with it.
Somebody pointed out that how ridiculous it is that he said he was getting rid of his slave name, when I think Kanye is a Nigerian name.
Oh, is it?
It's not even real.
See, I think he just...
It's all wrong.
I think he watched the recent news with Dunkin' Donuts and he was like, I'm not going to let the spotlight go on them. I'm cutting mine in half.
Bored.
Yeah, that's probably the case.
Duncan, you're
Which
right.
I could talk for like 20 minutes about
That was a
Dunkin'
dad joke. I'm proud of that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well, I'm not dad yet, but I'm working on it. Yeah, Dunkin' Donuts, what are you doing, man? You sell donuts.
No.
I shouldn't have to tell you this. That's what you sell. It sucks. They're not healthy. That's what you do.
They're not edible.
They're fine.
It is a good idea to stop advertising those things that they call donuts.
I'm getting mad at you right now.
Bad
I grew up on the East Coast.
The donuts are so bad.
Okay,
the coffee's great. The donuts are garbage.
I don't actually care about the coffee because... Here, can I say something before we get into Kavanaugh just to make you hate me? I think that when people say, and I'm not saying this is 100% true.
Okay.
But I feel it in my gut. When people talk about coffee that's good and coffee that's bad, you're exaggerating. There ain't that much difference between good coffee and bad coffee. That's
I'm with that.
View.
I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
And the donut holes are great.
The munchkins?
Yes.
They're adequate.
Okay, I'm already mad, so why don't we just talk about something that'll make me madder? Let's talk about Kavanaugh. Okay, so Brett Kavanaugh is now being investigated. If you're listening, you didn't see the air quotes there, but he's being investigated by the FBI. And there have been some concerns coming up about how broad that investigation will actually end up being. What can they investigate? What can't they investigate when looking into the allegations of sexual assault against him? So here are some issues. They apparently cannot talk with anyone concerning the Julie Swetnick claims of sexual assault. Whether you think that those are legitimate or not, you think they're too crazy to believe or not, we will never find out because they're not allowed to look into it. They also have a list of people from the White House that they're allowed to talk to. And they're not allowed to look into in any way Kavanaugh's drinking habits at Yale. So all these people have been coming forward saying that he was a drunk, so he lied about it. They can't look into that. They also can't talk to the supermarket that apparently employed Mark Judge to find out if that corroborates her account at the time. So these are some interesting limitations. Donald Trump got kind of furious over the weekend. The Democrats are pitching it as a limited investigation, which seems odd considering the Republicans announced it as something that was limited in scope and time. But now that the actual limitations are getting out, he's frustrated by that. In terms of these limitations, do you think that we are still likely to learn much, or do you think that these are designed to hamstring this thing?
You know, I am not sure what we are likely to learn. I think more importantly is that it seems regardless of what we learn, far too many people have decided they don't care. And far too many senators have decided they don't care, that it won't matter. And we're not talking about criminal charges. Yes, there are statutes of limitations for a reason when it comes to a lot of, criminal actions. But this is a job interview. And so taking us back to something Jeff Flake said, he said that, after the hearings, he wasn't sure. He was even more confused as to whether it happened or not. And a lot of people are upset with that because here's the thing. If you're not sure whether someone is a violent, sexual assaulter, is that a thing? Is that a word? But if you're not sure whether someone's rapey, then they don't get the job. You don't hire them. Let's say we're at Sears and we are the manager, we're the shift leader, and we're bringing somebody in and we're not sure if they have inappropriately touched someone. Most likely that person wouldn't get the job because it's a job interview and you would be looking for someone that you were sure about in that space because you want to protect everyone who does already work for you. And that would be unfortunate because you weren't sure, but it's not a courtroom. We're not talking about the death penalty. We're not talking about prison time. We're talking about a job. And it has all of these different words: confirmation, hearing, testimony. It's a job interview.
And there are other people that could get it. Sears could hire someone else.
Sears could hire, and they would, I think.
Yes.
And also then you take Lindsey Graham, who essentially says he didn't care. He doesn't care.
Yeah, he's been pretty clear. And he also
his mind is made
said,
up.
Yes, and he said that it doesn't really matter what the FBI finds. He's not going to be swayed because he's already decided that, look, he probably suspects that he did it. That's what a lot of people, I think, believe. He was sitting in that room with Christine Blasey Ford. So however intense and emotional her testimony was, it had to have been stronger for the people there.
We need to talk about a relatively new show called the Republic, or UNFTR. As a Young Turks fan, you already know that the government, the media, and corporations are constantly peddling lies that serve the interests of the rich and powerful. But now there's a podcast dedicated to unraveling those lies, debunking the conventional wisdom. In each episode of the Republic, or UNFTR, the host delves into a different historical episode or topic that's generally misunderstood or purposely obfuscated by the so-called powers that be. Featuring in-depth research, razor-sharp commentary, and just the right amount of vulgarity, the UNFTR podcast takes a sledgehammer to what you thought you knew about some of the nation's most sacred historical cows. But don't just take my word for it. The New York Times described UNFTR as consistently compelling and educational, aiming to challenge conventional wisdom and upend the historical narratives that were taught in school. For as the great philosopher Yoda once put it, you must unlearn what you have learned. And that's true whether you're in Jedi training or you're uprooting and exposing all the propaganda and disinformation you've been fed over the course of your lifetime. So search for UNFTR in your podcast app today and get ready to get informed, angered, and entertained all at the same time.
But he doesn't care.
And also something really important, you cannot believe both of them. And I think that they are dressing this up in, they don't want to call her a liar. But that's what you're saying. You cannot believe both of them. You cannot believe that she's telling the truth and that he's telling the truth. You cannot believe both of them.
Unless you believe a crazy doppelganger theory.
No one is confused about someone that they knew, a friend. This is not a stranger attack. No one would be confused about who held them down and put their hand over their mouth, that you were either telling the truth about that memory or you're lying. And he's either telling the truth or he's lying. You can't believe both of them. And I think if there was this bar where you had to just explicitly say, I think she's lying, we would be having a different conversation.
Yeah, and look, you could talk to, there were witnesses there. There were people who, he kept trying to say during his testimony that they said that this party didn't happen and he didn't do it. They have since come out. Her female friend at the party says, that's not what I said. I said that I don't recall the party, but I believe what she is saying.
Right.
He left that part out, oddly enough.
There's a long list of things and how that hearing, his side of the hearing went down that were just mind-blowing, I think, for a lot of people watching that. And everybody was watching that. But how he was yelling over the senators asking him questions, how he just blatantly refused to answer questions, how he said something that at the very least you could call misleading, and that over and over. and over that claim that her account was refuted.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was so disrespectful to a lot of people, putting questions back on them, and it totally irrelevant.
Yeah,
and
about her, like
weird.
Klobuchar passing out from being too drunk or something
Right.
like that. But in terms of what we can expect from this investigation, I know that Trump wants to have his cake investigation, eat it too. He wants to limit it, and he wants you to make you think that it's unlimited.
Right.
But there's a great evaluation of it by former FBI investigator Frank Figluzzi, who said, the assumption that the FBI is going to have free reign within what they've been tasked to do. Look at Ramirez. You make an assumption you're going to interview all of the witnesses to the Ramirez incident. You're going to run down every name she provides you. You're going to go to Yale and find people who were living in the dorm at the time. That's not happening. The FBI is not only dictating who you can interview, but also what investigative steps you can take within that allegation. So don't just narrow your hopes and expectations for what's going to come out of this. They're going to talk to a few people, and look, apparently they might talk to Mark Judge. Maybe they do that, and he just totally cracks under it. And he says, you know what, it did happen. But that's probably not going to happen. And so they'll find out some information. Maybe they'll look into that July 1st party. I wouldn't get my hopes up about that because it does really seem like this is being hemmed in on all sides by design.
He's also allowed to lawyer up and not answer any questions. So
he said that he would investigate, or that he would cooperate as long as it was confidential. I don't know what that means. Like, we know you, so it can't be anonymous.
Right.
And if you say something crazy, we need to know about it. So I don't understand exactly how confidentiality would work there. Anyway, okay, so we are going to take a break. We're going to come back. Laurie Penny's going to be joining us from the UK. We're going to be breaking down the state of debate, I guess, between the left and the right after this. Welcome back to the show, everyone. The Damage Report, John and Brooke here. We're joined now by Laurie Penny, author of No, I Will Not Debate You. Always love having Laurie on. Welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good and glad to have you back. So, look, I read your last article recently and absolutely loved it because I've been feeling quite similarly. Your article is basically about what debate represents in today's discourse. And so it looks like it was started, though, by Steve Bannon and him being initially invited to an event and then had the event canceled. Can you walk us through that and what led to you writing this article, No, I Will Not Debate You?
Right, so I'd had it in my mind for, years now, basically, because, look, I get into a lot of fights online. It's not my favorite thing to do, but it's kind of a side hobby when you write about politics on the internet. You always get people saying, well, if you're so against these people, whoever they are, misogynist, fascist, then why don't you just debate them in the marketplace of ideas, as if debate were this magical thing that could solve all political problems. And when Steve Bannon, lately Trump's previous, chief of staff and the architect of Breitbart News and white supremacist, among other awful things, was recently disinvited from the New Yorker festival, their literary festival, because various people who were attending said, no, we don't want to attend and be on the same stage as Bannon. And Bannon seems to be basically on a tour of literary festivals and events around Europe at the moment. And one of them was the Economist Festival in London, where he was due to be appearing via video link and indeed did so. And I was due to be speaking at the Economist Festival as well on the panel right before. And what happened, I didn't realize that Bannon was on the program as well. The panel I was meant to be on was about Me Too, what next after the Me Too movement. And one of my fellow panelists, Ali Fogg, got in contact with me and he said, look, how do you feel about this? And I said, well, no, hang on, no, I don't want to be giving legitimacy to Bannon by appearing on the platform that he's due to speak at. And so Ali and me and some of our fellow panelists got together and just said, no, we don't want to do this. And none of us were expecting it to cause as much fuss as it did, but it seemed like a good time to finally get all these ideas about debate out into the public arena. I also think it's significant that it was the Me Too panel and the men and women on that panel who were the first people to stand up, at least at the Economist event, and say, no, this is not okay. Having this man on the platform, however much you challenge him, legitimizes his ideas. And we've already heard enough from people from white supremacists and misogynists and racists. We don't need to legitimize those ideas anymore.
So in your article, you talk about Steve Bannon and his claims of censorship when he's taken off these panels. But you also talk more broadly about the concept of debate in the modern era. And the popular mythology is that you debate people because both people honestly want to present their argument, change the mind of the person on the stage with them, change the mind of the people in the audience. It's this intellectual exercise in the, in the tradition of the great Greek debaters and things like that. Is that, for many of these, the fascists, the white supremacists, the misogynists, and is that what they're actually doing? And if not, why do they want to have these debates?
Well, look, firstly, you've got to understand that I've interviewed and spoken with people on the far right. I'm not against talking to those people at all, but because I think you can understand stuff about this movement by doing journalism. But every single one of them I've encountered is deeply litigious. They are incredibly censorious. They don't actually care about free speech. Free speech for these people is just... Honestly, I really do think it is a gotcha. It's a way of suckering people into getting these ideas into the mainstream. They will cry censorship when they're not allowed to debate on public platforms and not allowed to, pump out their propaganda. But as soon as women or people of color are saying anything they don't like to hear, they feel completely free to harass those people and drive them out of public life and drive them out of public spaces. And to me, what is that if not censorship? There is profound hypocrisy here. But look, as you can probably hear, I'm from the UK and I went to quite a posh school. And at that posh school, like in lots of schools in the US, debate was this enormous thing. I was on the debate team. I actually got kicked off the debate team, but that's the story. Yeah, I got to. Actually, no, that's interesting. So the reason I got kicked off the debate team was I got over-invested in my topics. And that's the one thing you're not meant to do in debate. You're not meant to have skin in the game. But I would get too over-emotional about whatever it was we were supposed to be debating about. And, I didn't want to focus on humiliating the other person. I just wanted to, I just wanted to make the case as well as I could. And I would lose every time. Because in debate, in traditional classical debate, it's not persuading the other person that makes you win. It's humiliating the other person. Mm-hmm. There is no room in classical debate for the two people on either side or the four people or whoever many people it may be to actually say, is there any common ground here? Can we reach any point of agreement? It's just meant to be a fight. It's a competition. And I'm not sure that's how we actually build better ideas and build a better society. There's so much to discuss here, but honestly, I'm just sick of it. I'm sick of this debate format, and I don't think it's the way that we heal the deep political divisions in our society at all.
And what I like about that is that you at least appear to implicitly believe that if we're going to have debates, they should try to heal the divisions in our society. But there are many people, sort of professional debaters. That's what they do. They're either professional debaters or they're professional debate me bro people. They constantly are asking people to debate them. There's people on the right who've made their entire careers out of this. So the idea is that you'll have them and you'll have the champion on the left who will go against them. And maybe the person on the right wins. Maybe the person on the left makes them look ridiculous, points out the inaccuracies, the lies that they've told, the clear misogyny, things like that. In general, with these figures, though, does the person on the right care if the things they've said that are untrue are pointed out or if they're made to look ridiculous or anything like that? Like, you describe these debates as hierarchical and performative and about brand building. So does it actually matter how good your debate is?
Well, what matters, look, you hit on something really, really important there, because debate, in the way that it's come down to us, it isn't about conversation. It's theatre. It's performance. And that's why it's so important to me, at least, that you don't let fascists and you don't let people on the far, far right occupy that space, because really it's about getting your face out there. It's about having snappy lines. It's about persuading people that you deserve to be in this position of authority, because being somebody up on a stage representing a view is a position of authority. Honestly, what I've found, I've been doing this for, 12 years now, writing in public and speaking in public. And what I've found is that very, very few people actually have their minds fully changed in the court, particularly if they're a person on the stage. But, even if they're in the audience, being told that you're wrong and being humiliated, very, very few people, on hearing that they're wrong about something they deeply believe, will say, oh, my goodness, thank you. I never knew that I was wrong about everything I believe. Let me change my entire life now that you've humiliated me and shown me up. What happens is that people get angry. And eventually, maybe they go away, they have a think about it, and eventually, maybe they come to a different point of view. But it's not about changing minds. It's about grandstanding. And it's about occupying space. And that's why I believe that this culture of debate, this idea of debate as the ultimate form of public conversation, is really, really harmful. I mean, this is one of the mistakes that the left makes time and time again, which is the idea that just by pointing out where somebody is factually wrong, that's enough to win the argument. It's never enough to win the argument. If you don't have a good story, if you don't have good performance, then just saying that somebody's wrong is never going to... I wish it did, but it doesn't.
Yeah, it's a great fantasy. It's just not one backed up by much evidence in recent history, at least. So I want to ask you about one thing, and it sort of gets into what you were saying there, that I think a lot of people on the left honestly believe, they're in earnest saying, if we take them on and beat them by pointing out where they're wrong, that is how we can we'll destroy them. That's what the articles always say. They're destroyed. I noticed that they always bounce back the next day. They're never actually destroyed.
Yeah, but, I don't see... Look, I feel like we've given, sunlight is the best disinfectant. This idea that, yes, sunlight is the best disinfectant. You hear this again and again. If we just expose the moral failings of the far right, then, everybody will see what bad people they are. Yeah. And it will... Actually, I looked up, that's not just inaccurate. The metaphor is also inaccurate. I looked it up. Sunlight is not, in fact, the best disinfectant. The best disinfection is bleach.
Don't use bleach in your debates, though.
No.
We only have a little bit of time, but I do want to ask you one more question. As sort of a counterexample to that idea that we will take them on and we will defeat them and drive them away into the shadows and humiliation, there is someone who is much less talked about and much less present than they were 2 or 3 years ago, and that is Milo. Was Milo defeated by brave champions on the left taking him on in debate?
No, he was not. He was defeated by people eventually getting tired of his... Sorry, I'm not allowed to say that on TV. Sorry. But people are eventually getting tired of his nonsense and the martyr thing running out. Because look, this not banning, but refusing to allow people to have that public platform to debate, it gets you either way, right? Because if you do let people have that public space, then they can say whatever they want, they build their brand. But if you don't let them have it, then they say, oh no, censorship, martyrdom, free speech. So either way they get you, but on balance, I think denying that platform, refusing to engage, like you would refuse to engage with a child who's having a tantrum, for God's sake, that's the best policy long term, because they can only play that I'm a martyr thing for so long before everybody just gets bored and moves on. Yeah. And that's what's happened with Milo. And that's eventually what happens with all people when you deny them, when you just take the oxygen away from them. And yes, in the short term, they can claim that they're brave free speech martyrs, but after a while, people just forget. People move on to different ideas. Yeah. And, sorry.
Well, that actually makes sense, because we are unfortunately out of time as well. Right. But Laurie Penny, journalist and author, always glad to have you on. Thank you for coming on and talking about your most recent article.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, quick break. When we come back, a little bit more on Kavanaugh and an absolutely devastating natural disaster from the weekend. The death toll continuing to rise. We'll break that down after this. Welcome back to the Damage Report, everybody. A few more things I want to talk about having to do with Brett Kavanaugh. First of all, great question would be, we had testimony, Dr. Christine Ford, and we had Kavanaugh. Has it changed anyone's mind? It wasn't an actual debate, as we were just talking about with Laurie Penny, but it served the similar purpose. Did it change anyone's mind? I had seen one poll that showed something like 80% were like, no, it didn't change my mind at all. And certainly didn't make them flip from thinking he did it to he didn't, or vice versa. Some people said that they changed how credible they thought one or the other was, but not that they changed their entire mind. But we do have some interesting poll results. After the hearings, 51% said they are less likely to re-elect their senators if they vote to confirm Kavanaugh. So if you're interested in the political fallout from this, potentially, I mean, that is an interesting finding. I question how much people will actually remember that in 2, 4, or 6 years.
Right.
We'll see, or I guess hypothetically it would be later this year in that case. But people found Dr. Christine Blasey Ford more believable and credible than Kavanaugh. And 50% of people said that they will view the Supreme Court as less credible if the Senate confirms Kavanaugh. Although, again, one wonders how long that effect would last. Did you expect more people's opinions to be changed based on what you saw?
No, because
Thursday?
just based on where we are as a nation when it comes to politics right now. And so, no, this is not surprising to me at all. But I do, and it's fascinating that people are like talking about re-electing senators. It's why it's so important to really know who you're putting in office to begin with. Because look at Jeff Flake; he doesn't even want to be re-elected, and he's going to go out with a bang. And that bang, and it's a lot of talk. And there was like The Daily Show, there's a joke that there's a blanket with a bunch of tweets of Jeff Flake almost like being very, he's admonishing the presidential administration, but then still kind of going along with everything that they do. It was like they put all his tweets on a blanket because it's meaningless. You could sleep under it. But it's like, he stood there and said what he's not comfortable with, what he's going to do, what he's not going to do. And he could have saved all of that talk and just voted no.
And voted no, yeah. Would you like to see the newest thing that he says he's going to do?
Yes.
Instead of just voting no? So he was on with Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes, him and Senator Coons. And Scott Pelley asked them if Judge Kavanaugh is shown to have lied to the committee, the nomination is over. And they both said, oh, yes, I would think so. So I feel like we could wrap this up really fast because we showed definitively last week many of the different areas where he lied. And witnesses continue to come out saying that he lied. There was another quote from one of his classmates at Yale saying that he got belligerently drunk. He was throwing beers in people's faces and starting fights that ended with people going to the hospital or in jail, I should say. Maybe that's better, maybe that's worse, I don't know. He obviously lied. And so it's an interesting thing to say at the beginning of the investigation because it's already been shown that he lies. So are they setting themselves up to have an out and to say that they're going to vote against him? Or are they just saying that to seem reasonable? And no matter what comes out, we're still looking at him on the Supreme Court.
Well, that is Jeff Flake's. That is his MO. Yes, I would think so. Also vote yes to confirm.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? That's kind of his MO. If you just take a scroll down his Twitter feed. It's kind of very like, that's not what I'm going to do. This is not okay, guys. This is not us. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, one person trying to make us at least put him to the question, Flake to the question, is Bernie Sanders, who sent a letter this weekend to the Senate Judiciary Committee demanding that the FBI's recently reopened background investigation into multiple sexual assault and rape allegations against Kavanaugh should also include an inquiry into whether multiple statements made by the D.C. Circuit Court judge in front of Congress rise to the level of falsity. He said many things that you could investigate, and then that would provide the evidence that Flake and Coons need to comfortably vote no against him. I kind of doubt that it's going to happen, though, unfortunately.
I do, too. Yeah. And here's the thing, and I hope this doesn't upset people, but I don't have a problem with them not, before all of this, immediately just saying Kavanaugh is guilty before hearing anything. I don't have a problem with that. The problem is that in order to not say he's guilty, they don't have to go to the left and say she's a liar. You don't have to go all the way to the other side, and that's what happens oftentimes in these. Nobody just stands in the middle and says, we don't know, we want to listen. Everyone says, no, she's lying. Yeah. And that's the problem.
Yeah, and saying we don't know for sure, and because we don't know for sure, we're not going to put him on the Supreme Court for the rest of his life.
Right.
Which I think is perfectly
I think a lot of people
reasonable.
wouldn't have a problem with that.
No, I wouldn't.
Right.
Okay, we're going to take another quick break. We come back, lots more to get to. Welcome back, everyone. We turn now to the worst sort of news, obviously, both in terms of knowing what you should even say when something so tragic strikes the world, and also the fact that these sorts of things do happen so regularly. Absolutely devastating earthquake triggered off the coastline of Palu in Indonesia. That led to a tsunami. This is on Friday. And over the course of the weekend, an absolutely devastating number of people were killed, largely by that tsunami, although the earthquake also, of course, did some damage. Over 1,200 people now being reported dead by NPR. The different news outlets are reporting very different numbers, but regardless of who you go with, it's absolutely devastating. That death toll has continued to rise. It is believed that it could continue to go up even after today. At least 600 people were also wounded and are being treated in hospitals. Many of these hospitals, by the way, have themselves been damaged by the different disasters. More than 48,000 people have been forced from their homes. There was footage, by the way, at many of the airports in the region of people desperately trying to get away, just packing the area. And obviously there was not capacity for that many people to leave. One of the worst details here, of which there are many, the bodies of some of the victims have been buried in a mass grave. Right. The grave has space for more than 1,000 people. Apparently 540 were buried coming from a single hospital.
Oh, gosh, that's
And they're
awful.
talking about having, like, there was buildings that sank into the mud, so they've been having to dig people's bodies out from these basically mud pits. They're talking about the difficulty in getting to some remote areas where people are known to have died. So they're sending oil tankers and other sorts of ships that don't normally do this sort of thing to try to recover the bodies in a timely fashion. But absolutely devastating.
It's devastating. It's horrifying. It's a natural disaster that's taken the lives of more than 1,000 people. This is horrifying.
Yeah, and I saw, over the weekend, I saw some initial reports that indicated that their tsunami warning system had triggered to warn people, but that had then been reversed in advance of the tsunami actually hitting. I have not seen follow-up reporting on that I find to be credible enough to say definitively that happened, but I'm sure that people are going to be looking at it in the wake of this disaster and really wondering, in a case like this, what could have possibly been done.
Right.
I saw initial footage of it, and just the power of the wave. There were people in, I think, a parking structure that were filming as the wave was coming in and just sweeping buildings away. And it's difficult to imagine what could have been done in terms of building regulations to stand against the sheer power of the wave that was coming in. But obviously, absolutely devastating. 1,400 prisoners are missing from local jails in the area. It's entirely possible that this could be a repeat of, what happened with Katrina, where these are the sorts of people that get left behind when something like this happens. Obviously, with the tsunami, it's a little bit harder to plan for it. But regardless.
But that's what you think about when you talk about all the people who were packing airports trying to leave. Your heart, you start to think about, so then not even they are all able to get out. What about the people who knew they didn't even have that opportunity to begin with? When the warning systems go out, they know that they are stuck there.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately something that plays out not just in Indonesia, but in the U.S. as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to turn now to something that's also pretty disgusting. We've talked often about the California's 50th District congressional race that's going on, where you have Duncan Hunter Jr. going up against Ammar Campa, who has been on this show. I actually traveled down to the border to interview him by the border wall. And now a new ad has come out from his opponent. And it is not only one of the most deceitful ads that I think I've ever seen, but also one of the most disgusting, as you'll see.
Ammar Campa is working to infiltrate Congress. He's used 3 different names to hide his family's ties to terrorism. His grandfather masterminded the Munich Olympic massacre. His father said they deserved to die.
A Palestinian-Mexican millennial Democrat named Ammar Campa doesn't get his support from the people of San Diego.
He is being supported by CARE and the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a well-orchestrated plan.
Ammar Campa, a risk we can't ignore.
I'm Duncan Hunter, and I approve this message.
So that is absolutely terrible. By the way, it's weird that they didn't mention in terms of risks that this guy is facing, him and his wife, 60 indictments for corruption.
Right. So that's
not Ammar Campa, by the way. Duncan Hunter Jr.
Because you're like, he's going against his opponent. Also, he's going against jail time. So there's,
Yeah, it's possible he'll win the race and then go to jail.
Right.
Because he has defrauded Republican donors in the area who've given him money. So a lot of claims are made. I just want to quickly rebut a few of them. He's referred to as a Muslim. He's not a Muslim. He's born a Christian, raised in San Diego. His mom's Catholic. I tend to feel like if you want to know what religion a person is, you ask them and their family. I feel like they're usually the people who get to decide.
Being Muslim, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly, but it's not even factually true.
Right, but it's just frustrating that is still used as a put down, even saying he's a Palestinian Mexican.
Yeah.
Just in America, for so many people, calling someone Mexican, acknowledging that they're Mexican, is used as a put down. And it's just like, it's 2018.
Yeah, and In this case, they want to use that because they think that the rest of the lies will be easier to digest if you believe that this guy's a Muslim. If you believe honestly that he's a Catholic or a Christian, which he is, it's harder to believe some of the other lies.
Right.
For instance, his grandfather, who was referenced there as the terrorist, died many years before Ammar was even born. He literally never met the man. He couldn't. He hadn't been born yet.
Right.
He changed his name years ago, long before he ran for Congress. This was not some ploy that he did so that he could get in. And by the way, if you're going to change your name to hide your Muslim nature, you don't leave Ammar and Nahhar in your name. That seems ridiculous.
You change your name to Pete.
Exactly. And by the way, the Campa that he added, that's his mom's family name. It's not like he just decided to be Ammar Kennedy. It's his family name. He wasn't raised by his dad. His dad is referenced there as well. He did meet his dad early on, but his dad wasn't part of his life. Wasn't raised by him. And in terms of him being a security risk that's got to be stopped, he's actually gotten a security clearance for his prior work in the Labor Department in the Obama administration. So, like, the idea that he is infiltrating, this is some of the most disgusting, just unhidden anyway, Islamophobia and racism, just lies. Duncan Hunter Jr. is not only in that position because his father had the position and it was handed down with, the weird form of American aristocracy that we have, but he has been defrauding the people of his district for years and is now being investigated by the FBI for that. So he is desperately trying to distract you with these sorts of ridiculous lies that are easily knocked down. The Washington Post rated the ad 3 Pinocchios. I don't know what you have to do to get 4. Maybe to say that he had committed the actual attack. But absolutely disgusting. We've reached out to Ammar's campaign to let him come on and respond to this. But that is just the absolute worst kind of campaign that I think I've ever seen.
It is, and the worst part of all of this, most disheartening, is that Duncan Hunter knows there is an audience for this. And the fact that that is so, it's horrifying still.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do this if people weren't okay with it.
Yeah.
And so you got to hope. The hope is that more people are not, or that this just is too far. But the fact of the matter is that there are a lot of people in so many parts of this country that are, okay with that.
Yeah, I certainly believe so. It's possible they would go. Sometimes you can go too far, even for the crazies. And the 50th district is historically a red district. It's the sort of people that might be more likely to believe this sort of thing. But I don't know. You look at that thing with its like faux CIA, Jack Ryan imagery and things like that. He's quoting the sun and stuff like that. I hope that there are enough triggers to make people know that this guy, if you listen to him, he is a soft-spoken guy who talks only about the economy. By the way, the Muslim Brotherhood hasn't supported him. That's just complete lies, complete made up. Anyway, disheartening. We were talking with Laurie Penny about, healing the divisions that we have. That's not the way to do it. No. Doesn't seem to me. But like I said, we're going to try to have him on and give him a chance to respond there. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by a new guest to break down the intersection of pop culture and politics after this. Welcome back to What Remains of the Damage Report, everybody. SNL happened, and Kanye West was the musical act, I believe because Ariana Grande couldn't make it for one reason or another. And his performance that he put on was impressive. Not the music one, I mean the other one. And so we're now joined by Rick Strom, a noted fan of SNL and Kanye West, to break it down.
Not so much the latter anymore. All right, but continue.
We've got some specific quotes of his that we want to read, but basically he came out and did an impromptu sort of speech with the MAGA hat on. What did you guys think as you were seeing this unfold?
So we're talking about the speech that Chris Rock cut afterwards, right? The speech after the show ended?
Oh, yes.
Is that, yeah. What did I think of that? Okay.
In which you saw like you saw members of the cast sort of uncomfortably standing on the side. There was some walking out.
The whole time I thought is it Jost? Is that how you say his last name?
Colin Jost.
That I am him. I saw
the
whole time. He looked like it was hilarious.
Oh, I disagree. I think he was like, ridiculous. Man, I have so much material now for next week.
He was trying so hard to be respectful. And at one point he lost a little. He turns around and was kind of hiding his, no, that was me. Like, this is just ridiculous.
Do you think that they'll do it on next week's show?
Yes.
Oh, my God. Maybe they will.
Definitely.
Okay, so I want to read a couple of quotes and get your guys' reaction.
Okay.
Because he came on to make very particular, specific, political, and indeed philosophical points. He says, the blacks want always Democrats. It's like the plan they did to take the fathers out the home and put them on welfare. Does anybody know about that? That's a Democratic plan.
Stop for 1 second. Leave this up. Think that it wasn't Kanye West Could you see who could be saying this if we didn't have the credit on the bottom?
I feel like it's already been said.
It's Donald Trump.
Yeah.
That's who it sounds like. This is a Donald Trump quote, in my opinion.
Yeah. Maybe he's prepping to be his running mate in the next one. I don't know.
He talked about running.
So far as I know, just to put it out there, I don't think that that's the Democratic plan.
Right.
I studied political science. I didn't see that come up. But he also said, there's so many times I talk to like a white person about this and they say, how could you like Trump? He's racist. Well, if I was concerned about racism, I would have moved out of America a long time ago.
Well, good for you that you have the privilege to be able to leave the country when you're concerned about how it treats you. Good. You know what? That's great. That's the success that everyone wants.
Yeah, so there was an overall...
Great to not be able to not have to care about racism.
By the way, just because you try to get out of America or make a point of getting out of America, does everybody remember what happened when the French national team won the World Cup? The black players weren't viewed as Frenchmen. They were viewed in a different light because they won or because they lost. So even if you're trying to get out of America for racism, it exists everywhere. Everywhere.
And you can ask any player outside of any player that's playing professional soccer. I saw an article by Romelu Lukaku.
Yeah.
Same thing. He says that when he plays poorly, he's Congolese. When he plays well, he's Belgian.
Yeah, and look, I get what he's sort of trying to say is that you guys are acting like racism is some new thing now with Trump. Okay, I get that point, but Trump's really bad, and you're still supporting him. There are these mental tricks that people try to deploy to stop themselves from having to think critically about something that they don't want to think critically about. And he has found this one, and his defenders have found another, and that is when he comes out and says something crazy and wears a MAGA hat, they always say, he's brave to say it, he's saying something that you don't like, and that means it's good? They seem to think that you cannot respond critically to anything you hear because the person is saying it.
Right. So,
and look, my explanation sounds ridiculous because the argument is ridiculous. These same people on the right, the Candace Owens and all of those who love what Kanye said, do they not criticize people on the left for saying things they disagree with?
Completely.
But we're saying it. We're saying it. So how can you criticize it?
So basically, this is their way of putting up a shield and saying, well, you're not being a free thinker. You're not free. No. We're all free to feel however we want to feel. My main problem is when you're going in the historical context of hip hop, I now denounce Kanye West from the entire genre completely. And here's why. Because when it started in the 70s, right, it's transcended into politics completely. And when you have someone like Dead Prez and M1 who's like, what's on the radio, propaganda, mind control, and turning it on is like putting on a blindfold, that is revolutionary. When Public Enemy put up their fist and say, fight the power, that's something that is so strong, and that is exactly the complete counter of what Kanye West is doing. And the reason being is because he's supporting someone who is against that. He is against everything that Kanye rapped about it when he was in Spaceship. He was like, oh, now they love Kanye. Let's put them all in the front of the store. Like, he's being played completely. And the reason being is because the black vote, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, the last time I checked, it was at like 30-something% in favor of Donald Trump. So what Trump did, being the businessman that he is, pulled Kanye in and said, yo, we gotta get the black vote up a little bit. You got to help me out here. How about we go in favor of this? So that's why we're hearing the same sort of narrative from Kanye. And as a hip-hop fan, I know you're going to wait a sec. As a hip-hop fan, it's disturbing to see him go from being about the people and then against the people. And lastly, to say that he's not racist, do we not remember throughout his entire campaign when he ran on Mexicans are rapists, he's putting kids now in cages, he's supporting John Kavanaugh, and also Kanye is supporting Donald Trump, who has sexually abused multiple women, cheated on his wife. That's what he's standing for at the end of the day, and that's what the MAGA hat represents. And that's completely counter to what he did previously, and that's why it's extremely disappointing to me.
I think we've got to give Kanye credit for this. I think that that's a problem with people who were fans of Kanye. They just don't want to believe that this is just him. Listen, we don't know this man. This man is a rapper, and just because you love College Dropout, you can't just pretend that he was this person. That Kanye around that time wasn't being as open about who he is and what he believed. The first time we started hearing that, he started spewing this stuff. This is him. He's saying over and over and over again, this is me. I'm not sick. This is me. believe this is Kanye. What you remember about late registration, that's not Kanye. He's not being played. This man is 41 years old with a wife, with 3 children, with 45 businesses, 10 albums behind it. This is who he is. He's not being played. It's not trickery. I don't know why people refuse to believe that this man just believes this stuff. This is him.
We're getting an update that Donald Trump's approval in the African-American community is 9%, just to be clear. Also, you guys keep referencing a Kanye West, and I'm not familiar with that name.
Oh, right, because he's changed his name. He's
outdated. We need to move on.
Also, to make the point real quick that he's like Yandi, also, it's to see him transcend into the person that he is now. We just disagree a little bit on where it came from.
Yeah.
To see him transcend into this person and what he stands for is deeply, deeply disturbing.
Yeah.
Just Kanye West is not Donda West, and it's just he's not his mother.
I feel comfortable right now in saying that I've always felt he was overrated. I didn't know he was insane, so that is a new thing. Anyway, we unfortunately do have to go. Thank you, Rick, for joining us. Brooke, as always, thank you for watching. We'll be back tomorrow morning with much, much more for you. Thank you for listening to the Damage Report podcast, the show covering the true threats facing our country and what you can actually do about them. You can support this free podcast by leaving us a review and giving us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you happen to be listening to it. Every review helps more people discover the show at no cost to you. Thanks for listening to the full episode of The Damage Report. Support our work, listen ad-free, access members-only bonus content, and more by subscribing to Apple Podcasts at apple.co/TYT. I'm your host, John Adarola. I'll see you soon.